In this tutorial, we'll be looking at the plugin Color Llama, learning how to use it for color grading, matching brand colors, stylizing video, matching the color between cameras, matching the color on CG elements, and remapping the color in 2D animation. Let's get started. The effect is under Effect, Color Llama. To create a swatch, Control-click on the video, Command-click on a Mac. You click swatches to select them. Then you can change the swatch's target color using either the hue, saturation, and brightness controls, or the color picker control. It's that easy. That was a fast overview, but let's slow things down and go over every fine detail. The first stumbling block where you could have trouble is if the After Effects UI controls are off. So what are those? I'm going to go to Effect, Distort, Mesh Warp. And you'll see here there are controls on screen, and I can click them and drag them and move them to work with my effect. If I go to View and shut off Show Layer Controls, you'll see I can't interact with my Mesh Warp because the controls are gone. So the hotkey on Windows is Control-Shift-H, and on Mac it's Command-Shift-H, and the option is here. Make sure Show Layer Controls is on or Color Llama can't work. Also, make note of this text here. You must make the composition window active. And it tells you how to do that. Just click on your footage. See how this has a blue outline right here. Once I click here, now there's a blue outline here, and now all of the controls for Color Llama will work. So to create swatches, you can Control-click. I'll just create one here. And what you'll notice is that if I only have one swatch and I start making some changes, it's going to affect the entire video. Let's say that I have a swatch here in the dark areas and a swatch here in the light areas. As I start to adjust the lights, take a look at the darks. Notice how they're really not changing, see? What makes this plugin special is that each swatch controls a region of the color lookup table, and it won't step on the toes of the regions around it. So if I want to change just the color of this drink, I can Control-click in here, and I'll start making changes, and you'll see that it's changing some things that I don't want it to change. For example, the lemon. Well, that's okay. I can just Control-click on the lemon. So the way to read this is that this is a swatch representing the color in the video, and the target color is the color it's being changed into. In this case, if it's the same, it's not going to change. The point being that a swatch can be used to change a color, but you can also make a swatch if you want to say, don't change this color. Let's take a look at this shot next, where we have these colors, and they need to be matched to the brand colors that the client provided. To match the brand colors, I'm just going to start with one example. I'm going to create a swatch here. And one thing to remember is the brand colors show just one color, but here in the video, you can see the brightness is 39 where we created the swatch, but over here, it's 56. And throughout the can, there's going to be varying levels of brightness because this is using real-world lighting. So typically when you match brand colors, you might just want to remember what the brightness is of the swatch color. Then when you sample the swatch, set it back to what it was. So you're only changing hue and saturation. I'll repeat that with the other two cans. The brightness here is 49. So when I sample the brand color swatch, I'll go back and set the target color to 49, leaving the visual brightness of the can mostly unchanged. I'll do the same thing here. And now the brand colors match, however there are some colors that we didn't want to change. For example, the white on this paper. I'll Control-click, and I'll make sure my target color remains matching my swatch color, and that's basically just saying, wherever this is white, leave it alone. I'll do that in a few more places in the video. Each swatch prevents that selected color from being changed by the color of the other swatches. And last, I'm noticing the color on the lemon is a little bit off. So I'll sample it from the brand colors. And again, bring the brightness back to what it was. Maybe bring it up just a little bit. There's your before and after. Next, we'll take a look at this shot, but I promise we're going to learn something new. It's not just going to be choosing swatches like the last two, so pay attention. Alright, so to establish a baseline here, yes, we can go through, we can create a swatch like this, and there, and maybe somewhere around here, and maybe up here, and we can choose our 4 colors. Okay, that generally works, looks kind of cool. But one thing you'll notice is you'll still see some green sneaking in down here, and that's because the mode is on the change color mode. The idea behind this mode is it's more for the previous 2 use cases where you want the color in the video, you just want to tweak it slightly. But in this case, we don't want to change the color, we want to full on replace it. So I can change this from change color to replace color. And now the whole video is only going to be made up of these 4 swatch colors. But let's learn something new. There are advantages to transforming this color to black and white before we apply Color Llama. When I make this black and white, I'm going to go to Effect, Color Correction, Tint, and I'm actually not going to use Hue and Saturation. Well, why? In the human eye, the eye is more sensitive to green, and then it's secondly most sensitive to red, and third most sensitive to blue. This is something intuitive that's hard to place, but if you take this color pattern, what would you expect to look like when you turned it black and white? We'll add tint. And you'll see, oh, okay, so look, there's a gradient going on here. White is obviously the brightest, then yellow is perceptibly brighter, and green is somewhere in the middle after cyan, and then blue is at the very end. But what happens if we put on hue and saturation? Hue and saturation doesn't take account for human perception of brightness in different colors, so tint is the better way to go always. Also, the black and white filter makes this customizable, but it's not set up to the human standard of brightness, it's more just whatever custom you want, so I don't use it too often unless I'm doing something really specific. So back with our footage, I'm going to pre-compose this, moving all attributes into the new comp, and we'll just call this black and white llama. And in here, I'm going to make something fun. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new solid, and on it, I'm going to put a gradient. Moving back into this previous comp, now I can put color llama on here. I can still control click on the video to create swatches, but because this ramp is part of the video, I can control click here too. And I'll just drag this down over here, just for consistency. I'll set this to replace color, and now let's take a look at the color blending modes. So the color blend mode of smooth is pretty good for color correction. Sharp is for keying, we won't look at that, and posterized is stylized. So look at the difference in the fall off. In this poster, you don't see any smooth blend, it's just solid regions of color. That's what posterized is going to do. And then this LUT softness is just kind of like an added control where you can make it softer or harder if you want. This will be fine. You can drag these swatches around. This feels very much like old Colorama. And yes, you can do it on this gradient bar, but it's also kind of fun to drag around the video. I'll undo that. I want to stick using this bar for now. So one thing you probably noticed in the demo video is right here we have 4 regions, but there's actually 5, and one of them has crosshatch shading. So how can we pull that off with Color Llama? It's actually really easy. So the blue and yellow hatching goes somewhere between the blue and yellow, and I'll just control click to create another swatch. So I can't add shading directly in here, but what I can do is turn down the alpha value, and I can put something behind it. I'll make a new solid, and make it blue, put that underneath, and then I'll make another solid and go to Effect, Generate, Grid. And I'll make this yellow. Then I'll just set these 2 grid points for those of you who, I think most of you know how grid works, but what the heck, let's just take a look. You just control these 2 points and it makes a grid, so I'm going to go all the way across and then maybe increase the thickness here. Okay, that's looking pretty good, so that's how we did that. Also, you may be wondering about the noise in this image here. That's pretty grainy. Well, that's just grain from the original video. Just to point out, it's usually going to be helpful to denoise anything before you do intense color selection. So you can use the built-in denoiser, remove grain, and that will help to some extent. But I prefer to use Neat Video. I kind of hate that I always advertise this in other tutorials, but it really is that good. I can't live without it. Because this is stylized, we're just going to exaggerate. Before, after. So there you go. That helps a lot on these stylized shots. I just went back to an earlier version of the project. Now's a good time to explain what it means to expand a swatch's reach and how shift clicking does that. So let's say, for example, we wanted the reach of blue to be greater. As you drag it up and down, you can change which color it's on, but not how far it reaches. So if we wanted this blue to expand, actually probably the easiest way to do it would be to make another swatch here and set its target color to blue. We could do this as many times as we needed. But this is wasteful because all we're trying to say is that multiple colors are transforming to the same target color. So we've created a shortcut to do this invisibly. I'm going to delete these two swatches. When I select this swatch, if I shift click, it's going to create an invisible swatch behind the scenes over those colors. So I'll just delete the expanded colors for a second, and you'll see that I can shift click and shift click and shift click and shift click, and I'm making more expanded colors. One thing that's very important is that when you take this swatch and you drag it around, watch what happens. Those expanded colors are immediately deleted whenever you change the swatch color. And the reason is that a lot of times you'll be doing something like this, maybe trying the colors in different orders, and it might be obstructive if your other swatch still lived down here while you were moving things around. So just remember, whenever you drag a swatch, it's going to remove your expanded colors. One last example using this shot, dock mode. So if I hit Shift D or hit this checkbox, it's going to arrange all of my swatches on the left side of the screen. This can be good just to get them out of the way so you can see. But probably the best part about it is it sorts the swatches in order of illuminance when this checkbox is on. If it's off, it just does it in the order you created them. These colors I've picked don't look very good, and part of the reason why it looks so unnatural is because the brightness of the original shot isn't preserved. That's why the dock sorts by luminance, so it's easy to figure out the relationship of brightness between all of your swatches. So if I go through here, and I bring all the brightness of the target colors more in line with what the swatch color is, things are going to look and feel more normal. So the dock is just here for your convenience in terms of swatch placement and luminance. Alright, this shot's next. This one is not rocket science, the way that you would go about it, and I'll just do it very quickly, is get in there. Probably want to turn down your swatch scale, that way when you create the swatches they aren't too large. And just for good measure, let's sample the black on the edge of the color checker and the white on the shirt. Okay, to make things easier, I'm going to take the target footage here and move this over with no mask, and I'm just going to cut this here. And I'm going to go through the slightly painstaking, but really not even that bad process of selecting each of these and choosing the target color. Maybe I'll zoom out so you can see it happening live. Okay. We can play the shot back, and one of the interesting things is if you look at these two lenses, how they differ. This one right here, this lens actually brightens as you zoom out. If you look at the Blackmagic, it's not the camera specifically, it's the lens that was on it. There's a little bit of a color change. So that's the kind of thing where you might have to make use of the keyframes down here, and you might have to actually change the target color over time. But let's just take a look at it as is. Not bad. I'm going to duplicate this layer. One thing I'll point out is that you have a lot of good colors here because you have the color checker and you have the black and white, and you really have enough information to do a full shot transform. A lot of times when you're shooting on set, you're not going to have all of this color information. You'll only have a few pieces. So it's probably best to use standard color correction to do a broad brush across your footage, and then use Color Llama to make each of the specific points really, really perfect. So I'm just eyeballing curves here, but use whatever tools you know how to use. And then maybe vibrance. Possibly saturation. So now with these two broad effects, at least every color here is somewhere in the ballpark. So just for example, we're going to pretend that there weren't the colors of the suit. This is a pretty realistic situation you might run into, is you might just not have all of these colors to match between. On here, I'll go to Add Color Llama, and I'll make a point here on the sky, sample the sky, definitely on the nose, I'll make the swatch size a lot smaller again. Let's see if we can get the eyeball. And maybe with some luck, I can get in this shaded region. I think that mostly looks okay. Maybe I can also get this building. This is going to be tough because this building has a lot of different colors in it. But let's just try. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this shape layer. And you can see, even though we were kind of at a loss here, I'll shut off Color Llama, it really did take it mostly over the finish line. I'm sure there might be some slight differences in here that didn't get compensated for, but at a glance it looks pretty good. So, again, probably the best thing you can do in a real production situation. Eyeball the grade, get it as close as you can without pulling your hair out, and then use Color Llama to make it perfect. Here's another shot where the background is live action and the foreground is CG from Cinema 4D, rendered in Redshift with a shadow catcher. I'll put Color Llama on there, and I want to make this shadow match that shadow. I'll create a swatch here, and create a swatch here. On this one, I'm going to bring the alpha down quite a bit, and probably make it a little bit darker, and just go by eye. As for the llama itself, I don't want the alpha value to be affected. So I'm going to make sure that this target alpha for this swatch is full. And then I'm going to shift click to increase the reach of this swatch all over the llama. There, now it's matched. Before, after. A lot more work went into this shot than just color matching, but it's a good start. As for other use cases, the plugin is capable of keying, so I'll create a swatch here and create a swatch here. For this one on the green, we're going to set the target alpha down low to 0, and for this other swatch, we will shift click around. One thing to point out is that LUT softness should be set to 0 whenever you're doing keying. And we'll set the color blend mode to sharp in the keying mode. Alright, not bad, although technically not as accurate as composite brush. And last but not least, a great use case is changing 2D animation. So we can make swatches here. And just like that, you can change an entire animation, affecting the whole palette. Next, let's take a quick look at the Export LUT feature. So here are some shots that I've taken directly from the Adobe Premiere sample project. If you just open up Premiere with a new project, you can disable this skip import mode and it will show you these clips, and it's good to get a feel for the software. The good thing is they all look the same, they all might want to use the same LUT. So under Effects, I can go look up Color Llama, drag this down, select it, and it's going to work extremely similarly to how it does in After Effects with a few limitations. Let's say that I want to control click and make a swatch on her shirt, also in the sky, and maybe, I guess, on the tree. I'll bring up the saturation here. I'll select the shirt. One of the first limitations you're going to notice is that if I select this target color here in Premiere, and I drag this and move this around, you're not actually going to see an effect on the clip. And that's because Premiere just works differently with this color box. It doesn't apply until after you hit OK. So it's usually better to try to use these controls, the hue, saturation, and brightness controls, so you can see exactly what's happening. I'll make one last change up here to the tree. And there's a before and after. I mean, honestly, the before grade looks pretty good and there was no reason to do this, but I'm just going to show you how to take this look and apply it to all the other clips in the sequence. So one way, obviously, you could take Color Llama here. You could copy it and paste it. Sure, that's great. But another way is using LUTs, which can be really good if you're sharing LUTs with the rest of your team. Maybe not everyone has Color Llama installed, or maybe you're using the LUT on some live broadcast software. There are a lot of reasons why you want to be using a LUT. To create a LUT, just go to Export LUT, click this. I'll save this to my desktop and I'll just call it Skate. Then, on whatever clip I want to apply that to, I'll grab Lumetri Color. Back in my effects controls, I have Lumetri Color here. Under Basic, go to Input LUT, Browse, and choose the LUT you just made from Color Llama. And there it is. Then you can take this and copy and paste it to the other shots in your sequence. Both of these process fast. I suspect Lumetri is going to process a little bit faster than Color Llama. Now, the next thing I'm sure you're asking is how accurate is this LUT to what Color Llama looked like? So if I copy and paste this clip, and I have two instances here, on this top one, I'm going to take that Lumetri effect here that has the LUT, and I'm going to paste it, and I will delete Color Llama. So Lumetri is on the top, and Color Llama is on the bottom. Now, when I toggle this off, you'll notice they're visually identical. So if you're just changing colors, the lookup table is a great solution. Let's look at the limitations of lookup tables, however. I'm moving back into After Effects because it's easier to work with alpha values and animation. So let's say, for example, on this swatch, I bring down the alpha value. And her shirt is somewhat transparent. Just fixing that key, I'm not sure why I care. Using my expansion colors. Okay, good enough. Now, if I go ahead and I export this LUT, I'll say in this one the orange value is set to be transparent. Let's hide Color Llama. And then I'll choose the LUT. So cube LUTs don't contain transparency information, so it's not going to get the transparent effect. That's something you need the plugin for. Also, forget transparency, let's just animate this a little bit. So in order to animate, you have to go down here to swatches, and we have our target color, and we'll animate this from orange to maybe a little bit pink. And, what the heck, let's just have some fun with it. Green. Blue. We can put this in dock mode with Shift D. That just moves all your swatches over to the left side. And we can play this back. So now what happens if I go to this frame here and I export a LUT? Again, I'll add Lumetry and I'll select that LUT. Okay, it's working, the shirt is blue, but as I move back, there's no animation because cube LUTs don't contain animation. You may be wondering what this brush radius is. If you take a look at this footage here, it's pretty grainy, right? So you zoom in and there's you want to sample this green or this yellow or whatever, but depending on which pixel your mouse is over, you might get dramatically different colors because of the grain. So what this brush radius feature does, and it's set to 2 by default, it's going to have a certain width, where when you create a swatch or create an expanded color, it's going to reach around in a radius from where you clicked, in this case a radius of 2, sample all of those colors, create an average, and then make that the swatch color. So in another way of thinking, it's almost like you're pre-blurring the video. So in this case, if I blur this by 2 pixels, well, now when I click in one of these areas, it's more likely I'm going to get the color that I want, as opposed to some deviation that's only brought out through noise. I would probably just leave the brush radius at 2 and never think about it again. And finally, let's explain what's happening with this keyframe swatches. So when you click here on a swatch, you'll notice that this is kind of a fast preview. These parameters show you the color values of your swatch and your target color and your target color's alpha. But this isn't where the parameters permanently live. This is just a convenient place to surface them so when you're clicking around, you can get at them. Really, the parameters live permanently down here in this list. It would have been pretty annoying to have all of these controls here and make this list really, really massive. Now, why is this called keyframe swatches? Well, because this is where you have to apply your keyframes. So if I'm going to animate the color of this glass, this is where I set the keyframe value. You can't do it up here. However, you can still use these controls to change the colors. And that automatically is sent down to this value where the swatch color lives permanently. If I press U, you'll see here the keyframes. So there's 2 ways you can animate these colors. You can animate them with keyframes, but you can also use expressions. Finally getting around to the point, one of the things you might notice that isn't perfect is that if you delete swatch 2, what happens to swatch 3? Swatch 3 remains the same. Swatch 2 is just left empty. You may be thinking, why wouldn't it just shrink the list? And why wouldn't it make 3 into 2 and 4 into 3 and 5 into 4? The reason is that you might be using expressions from another layer to target one of these target colors in Color Llama, or you may be using an expression here to target something else. And if the plugin was just to change it from its permanent home here at target color 3 to target color 2, it might break a whole bunch of other stuff in your project. It seems that the lesser evil in development was that when you delete a swatch, it doesn't ripple the list back down, it just leaves them where they are. However, don't be afraid, you get 64 swatches. So I'm going to make 64 more swatches to get to the end of the list, just for example's sake. Here they are. And if I try to create another swatch here, you'll get a warning. If I delete swatch 1, and then go to create another swatch, then it takes the place of swatch 1. So in short, in the highly unlikely situation that you delete swatches and then keep creating more and more and more and more, you'll always have the ability to use 64, and deleting one doesn't take one away from the list. The last note for this tutorial is, what are these swatches with red X's? Well, this is a lookup table, and you can only have one value per one color. So when there's a red X, that means that there's another swatch somewhere that already has that value. If it has a red X, it's not processing, it's not doing anything. You're best off just deleting the swatches with the red X's, and if for whatever reason you like this swatch, then you have to find and delete whatever swatch is conflicting with it. So maybe it's this one. Aha, that was a good guess, it was. So now 53 is active because the one that was sharing the same color has been deleted. So that's all. Those are all the details you could possibly need. Thanks so much for watching, and you can find more info at aescripts.com/colorllama.